The Panama Canal is dying. Every year, $270 billion in goods flows through a 50-mile stretch of concrete and water. It connects the Atlantic to the Pacific. It's been the single most important trade artery in the Western Hemisphere for over 100 years, and it's running out of water. Western shipping executives are panicking. Port operators are scrambling. Economists are warning of cascading shortages that will reach your grocery store and your gas station. And China? China is barely watching. Because while the Western world was staring at a drying canal, China already switched on the replacement. A route that doesn't run through Central America or Egypt or the Red Sea. A route built through 4,000 miles of melting ice at the top of the world. And the West had no idea it was already open for business. Somewhere in Washington, D.C. right now, someone is staring at a map they don't understand. The Panama Canal, the single most important trade corridor in the Western Hemisphere, is running out of water. Ships are getting turned away. Reroutes are costing tens of millions in extra fuel. And the backup plan they're desperately searching for? China built it. A decade ago. This is the story they haven't told you. For 110 years, they told you the Panama Canal was irreplaceable. They were right, until the water started disappearing. In 2024, the canal cut ship crossings by 36%. Some vessels waited weeks in the queue. Others rerouted entirely, burning millions in extra fuel. The disruption was called a crisis, a once-in-a-generation problem with no clean solution. That's what they said in the West. China had already solved it. Here's something the mainstream media missed when they covered the Panama Canal crisis. They framed it as a global shipping problem. It is, but not equally. Over 70% of traffic through the Panama Canal moves to or from U.S. ports. American consumers on the East Coast depend on it for goods arriving from Asia. American farmers in the Gulf depend on it to export grain eastward. Without the canal, those routes add 8,000 miles around Cape Horn, or 12,000 miles across the Indian Ocean. For America, the canal is irreplaceable. China's picture is different. China's strategic planners spent the last 15 years systematically reducing dependence on every Western-controlled choke point. The Strait of Malacca near Singapore, the Suez Canal in Egypt, the Red Sea corridor near Yemen, they even have a name for the fear that drives this thinking. The Malacca Dilemma. The paranoia that 90% of China's trade flowing through choke points within reach of American naval bases is an existential risk. If there's a war, if someone presses a button, China's economy freezes overnight. Their solution was never to complain about it, it was to build around it. And the most audacious piece of that plan runs through the most inhospitable place on Earth. In January 2018, China released an official government document that most Western analysts dismissed. It was titled China's Arctic Policy. Inside, Beijing declared something extraordinary. They called China a near-Arctic state. China is nearly 900 miles from the Arctic Circle. There's no historical connection, no Arctic coast, no polar territory. But China has a principle. If a route matters to your economy, you claim a role in it. And they gave their Arctic ambition a name that should have made every shipping executive pay attention. The Polar Silk Road. What that 2018 announcement didn't say. The plan had already been running for 5 years. In 2013, 12 years ago, China's state shipping company COSCO sent a vessel called the Yongsheng from Shanghai to Rotterdam. Instead of the standard route south through Malacca and Suez, it climbed north. It hugged Russia's Arctic coastline. And it arrived faster than anyone expected. The Western press called it a curiosity, a science experiment. China called it a proof of concept. The route the Yongsheng took has a formal name, the Northern Sea Route. It runs along the top of Russia, starting near Norway's North Cape and stretching east all the way to the Bering Strait, the narrow gap of ocean between Russia and Alaska. From there, ships descend into the Pacific toward China, Japan, and South Korea. The distance numbers are staggering. Shanghai to Rotterdam through Suez, roughly 12,000 nautical miles. Through the Arctic, just over 8,000, a savings of nearly 4,000 nautical miles. Cut the distance. You cut the fuel, you cut the time. A voyage that takes 35 to 45 days via Suez takes just 20 to 25 days through the Arctic. For every container shipped, that's thousands of dollars saved. Multiply that across millions of containers. And you begin to understand why China wasn't flinching when the Panama Canal started drying up. Here's what almost every piece of coverage on the Arctic route misses entirely. This isn't theory. It isn't a pilot program. It isn't a geopolitical chess move on paper. In late 2025, just months ago, China launched the world's first scheduled Arctic container service between Asia and Europe, and the numbers should have made global front pages. The ship was called the Istanbul Bridge. On a late September morning in 2025, it left Ningbo Zhoushan, China's largest container port, loaded with nearly 5,000 shipping containers packed with goods bound for European holiday shelves. But it didn't head south towards Singapore and the Suez Canal like every other ship. It went north. The Istanbul Bridge climbed through Russia's Arctic waters, crossed the top of the world, and arrived at Felixstowe, Britain's largest container port, in just 18 to 20 days. 18 to 20 days. Compare that to the standard route. 40 days via Suez, nearly 50 days around the Cape of Good Hope. Even China's fastest overland freight trains to Europe take 25 days. The Istanbul Bridge cut the calendar almost in half, and it was not a one-off stunt. Ningbo Zhoushan Port announced this as the launch of the world's first China-Europe Arctic Express route, a regularly scheduled seasonal service connecting Chinese ports including Qingdao and Ningbo to Felixstowe, with onward stops at Rotterdam, Hamburg, and Gdansk. This is no longer an experiment, it is a shipping lane. The cargo volumes on Russia's Northern Sea route confirm the trajectory. In the early 2010s, total annual cargo was roughly 4 million tons. By 2018, the year China released its formal Arctic policy, it had climbed to 20 million tons. By 2020, 32 million tons. By 2024, nearly 38 million tons. Transit freight, cargo actually crossing between ocean basins, the metric that measures this as a true international shipping alternative, hit 3 million tons in 2024 across 92 voyages. That number doubled from 2023 to 2024. Let that land. While Western economists were writing crisis reports about the Panama Canal, China and Russia quietly doubled Arctic shipping traffic in a single year. But a shipping lane is only as powerful as what's behind it. And what China and Russia have assembled in the Arctic is a level of infrastructure the Western world hasn't attempted in a generation. To use the Northern Sea route, any ship from any country, you need Russia's permission. Every vessel must submit formal applications to Russia's Northern Sea Route Administration. Hull ratings, ice class certification, crew training records, detailed voyage plans specifying entry point, route, and exit. The process takes months. Russia assigns an ice pilot who boards your vessel and guides the captain through polar conditions. They designate which icebreaker escorts your ship. They control every checkpoint along the way. This is not a free international sea lane like the Indian Ocean or the Pacific. It is a managed corridor, and Russia holds the keys. That power rests on one extraordinary fact. Russia operates the world's most powerful icebreaker fleet. 41 icebreakers total. 34 diesel-powered, 7 nuclear. The nuclear ones are decisive. Compact reactors that run for years without refueling, pushing through ice 10 feet thick at sustained convoy speeds. The newest Arctica-class ships stretch over 500 feet long and can escort full cargo convoys through the frozen Arctic Ocean. And China isn't just a passenger in this system. They're buying equity in it. The Yamal LNG project, a massive liquefied natural gas plant carved into Russia's frozen Arctic coast, is partly owned by Chinese firms. In 2024 alone, it shipped 21 million tons of LNG across 287 tanker loads. A significant portion traveled east through Arctic waters directly to China, South Korea, and Taiwan. China is already importing Arctic energy through this route. The shipping lane and the energy supply chain are a single integrated system, and China has ownership stakes in both. And China is building its own capability. 20 years ago, China operated 0 icebreakers. None. Today, they operate multiple polar vessels, including the Suolong II, the first icebreaker built entirely in Chinese shipyards, commissioned in 2019. Advanced plans are moving forward for a heavy nuclear-powered icebreaker that would rival Russia's Arctica class. The Chinese built one. They're already designing the next one powered by nuclear reactors. This is not a country improvising a backup plan. This is a country that saw the future coming and engineered itself into it. Washington has been watching all of this quietly, and the concern runs deeper than shipping economics. For 70 years, the architecture of global trade moved through corridors where America had direct influence. The Strait of Malacca, within range of U.S. naval bases in Singapore and the Philippines. The Indian Ocean, U.S. Fifth Fleet operating out of Bahrain. The Red Sea, American allies controlling both coastlines. The Suez Canal, U.S. allied Egypt. American military presence was the unspoken guarantee that kept these lanes open and running. That leverage gave Washington tools that went well beyond military power: trade sanctions, financial pressure, diplomatic weight. The Arctic route changes that calculus. It runs along Russia's coast, completely outside American reach. It bypasses every choke point America has policed for decades. And it's being built as part of a deliberately de-dollarized trade system, designed from the ground up to operate independently of Western financial infrastructure. China isn't militarizing the Arctic. They're not planting flags or claiming sovereignty. They follow Russia's rules, pay Russia's fees, and operate inside existing international frameworks. By the letter of international law, everything they're doing is legal. But the strategic effect is identical. Global trade doesn't need to flow through American-influenced corridors the way it once did. When it doesn't, American leverage shrinks. That's the part that keeps people in Washington up at night. Here's the revelation that most analysts are still catching up to. China did not build the Arctic route in response to the Panama Canal crisis. They started executing this plan in 2013, more than a decade before anyone in Washington was seriously discussing drought risk in Central America. This is the pattern. Every time. Belt and road deep-sea ports across the Indian Ocean, built when Suez traffic was at record highs. The Polar Silk Road, built while Western shipping executives assumed Arctic ice would block it forever. Rail corridors across Eurasia, built while Western analysts argued they'd never be cost competitive. These aren't reaction plays. They're a decade-long strategic architecture built around one insight. Western choke points are vulnerabilities, and vulnerability creates opportunity. The data backs this up. The Suez Canal was blocked for 6 days in 2021 when the Ever Given ran aground, and global trade lost an estimated $9.6 billion. The Red Sea became effectively a war zone in 2024 when Houthi attacks forced ships to reroute around Africa, adding $1 million per voyage in extra costs. The Panama Canal restricted crossings by 36% in 2024 due to drought. Every time a Western choke point failed, China's alternative infrastructure became more valuable and more used. The Arctic route has real limits. It operates reliably only from July through October. Ice-capable ships cost significantly more to build and operate, and Russia's gatekeeping creates its own dependencies. China hasn't solved every problem here, but they've solved the most important one. They have options. The West is still scrambling to secure routes it doesn't own. China is routing around the scramble entirely. So what does this actually mean? Like, every year the Arctic warms, and it's warming 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. China's route becomes more viable. Longer operating seasons, more ice-free passages, more capacity. September Arctic ice has been shrinking at roughly 12% per decade. The math is not subtle. It means the companies that built their supply chains around Panama Canal transit have a shrinking window to adapt before Arctic economics make their current models obsolete. And it means the next time a canal runs dry, a ship runs aground, or a strait becomes a war zone, China will have somewhere to go. The Panama Canal isn't just running out of water. The age of Western-controlled trade routes is running out of time. If this opened your eyes to what's actually reshaping global power, subscribe. Because this is exactly what this channel exists to show you. The engineering breakthroughs, the geopolitical moves, the strategic shifts that don't make front-page news until it's too late to ignore them.